Good morning. My name is Debbie Harrington, First Vice Regent of Piety Hill DAR chapter. Thank you for coming to this Veterans Day event in Chene Park. This program is being presented by the Piety Hill chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, jointly with the City of Birmingham. I am pleased to introduce Holly Heiss, Regent of Piety Hill chapter DAR. Holly.
Thank you. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the fighting of World War I ended in 1918. A congressional act in 1938 made November 11th a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to thereafter be celebrated and known as Armistice Day. This was for the World War I veterans. At the urging of major U.S. veteran organizations, Armistice Day was renamed Veterans Day in 1954. This federal holiday is celebrated to honor all military veterans of the United States Armed Forces. On behalf of Piety Hill Chapter, National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, and the City of Birmingham, I welcome you to Veterans Day 2022 here in Birmingham's Chene Park. Veterans Day is the day set aside to thank and honor all those who served honorably in the military, in wartime and peacetime. In fact, Veterans Day is largely intended to thank living veterans for their service, to acknowledge their contributions to our national security, and that they were appreciated, and to underscore the fact that all those who served, not only those who died, have sacrificed and done their duty. We are proud of our veterans' commitment, dedication, and contributions for the continued security of our nation. Thank you, veterans.
It is my pleasure now to recognize our program participants who have come here today to honor our veterans. The color guard is the Civil Air Patrol Cadets from Oakland Composite Squadron, Cadet Dylan Coppins, Cadet Cameron Boucher, and Cadet Benjamin Lindsay. The Birmingham Police Department will act as the honor guard for the wreath laying ceremonies with Officer Weiner and Officer Roberts. Ms. Samantha Stafford, an actor at Janitti's Dinner Theater in Northville, will sing the national anthem and America the Beautiful. Frank Stassa III and Randy Olenek will play the bagpipes, and Ms. Lynn Popa, who will play the bugle. Civil Air Patrol, will you please post the colors? Please rise. Thank you, Civil Air Patrol. You may be seated. Amy Zimmer, Piety Hill Chaplain, will give the invocation.
Veterans Day is a time for us to pay our respects to those who have served our country in the military. Today we stand united in respect and gratitude for our veterans. I invite you to pray in your tradition as I pray in mine. Please bow your head if you feel comfortable doing so. Creator God, as we come together on this Veterans Day, we celebrate and honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. We are grateful for those who made sacrifices over 200 years ago to establish our country, those who fought to keep our union from dividing, and those who answered the calls to defend America and to preserve democracy. We feel at peace for those veterans who are with thee, but our hearts go out to those who are living in veterans' hospitals, nursing homes, and even on our streets. Ease their pain, O Lord. We thank you for all you have given us and for those men and women who have protected and continue to protect our country and its citizens. Watch over them and keep them in your hearts. Bless our country and guide its leaders. In your name we pray. Amen. God bless America.
It is now my pleasure to recognize our federal officials, state, county, and city. I'm not sure, is Haley Stevens here? Or Mallory McMorrow? Come on up if you're here. We just want to recognize you. State Representative Mari Manugian's here. Chuck Moss, Commissioner. And Mayor Therese Long. I'll turn that over to Therese.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning. On behalf of the City of Birmingham and the City Commission, I'd also like to welcome you all here to Shane Park for today's Veterans Day ceremony. I'd like to recognize at this time my fellow City Commissioners who have joined us this morning. We have Mayor Pro Tem Pierre Boutros, Commissioner Clinton Baller, Commissioner Elaine McLean, Commissioner Brad Host. Commissioner Andrew Haig extends his regrets. He's currently on a plane flying back to the state, and Commissioner Katie Schaefer is attending to her young patients because there is a lot of RSV in the community, as you've all heard. So we understand why they couldn't be here today. It is a privilege to be here today as we honor all veterans and their families and those who support them, and thank them for their patriotism, their love of country, their willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. I also want to recognize and thank this morning the Piety Hill chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution for organizing this ceremony. Each year, your efforts bring our community together to focus attention on the important purpose of this day. We are reminded of our country's and our city's history and rich traditions as we stand united in respect for you, our veterans. We thank you for your service. And now I'd like to introduce Mayor Pro Tem Pierre Boutros, who will say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, everyone. As Mayor introduced me, I'm Pierre Boutros, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Birmingham. It is a pleasure and a privilege to speak to all of you this morning. I'm honored to pay tribute to our men and women in uniform, past, present, and future. America must never forget your sacrifices. the willingness of America's veterans to sacrifice for our country has earned them our lasting gratitude. And for those who support our soldiers, those who bear the burden of intense work and anxiety during a deployment, the families, their support and understanding are a critical part of the success of our soldiers. Let us show our appreciation for our veterans on this day by being proud of this great country. Let us work together and be kind to our fellow citizens. May we set aside our differences and stand together, united in this great nation. As said by Dan Lipinski, an American politician and political scientist who served 8 terms as a U.S. rep for Illinois 3rd Congressional District. On this Veterans Day, let us remember the service of our veterans, and let us renew our national promise to fulfill our sacred obligations to our veterans and their families who have sacrificed so much so that we can live free. Veterans, we come together today with the same purpose. For you to know we are grateful to you and for our freedom, not only today, but every day. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, your courage, your selflessness, and your dedication to our country. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you again.
Marcia Vetrone, 2nd Vice Regent, Piety Hill, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Do you mind sitting down first? I have a little announcement to make before we stand to salute the flag, or to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to say good morning to all of you. And today is such a special day because we get to say thank you to our veterans. We get to honor our veterans. We get to recognize our veterans. But we can also celebrate a birthday today. I have to say happy 130th birthday to the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance was written by Francis Bellamy and first published September 8th, 1892. Actually, there was an earlier pledge written by a Civil War Army captain named George T. Balch in 1887. I'm going to read both of these pledges to you. They're very short. The Pledge of George T. Balch said, "We give our heads and hearts to God and our country. One country, one language, one flag." The 1892 pledge, written by Francis Bellamy, which is the precursor to today's pledge, originally read, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." Actually, both of those pledges were said throughout the country, different regions of our country. Bellamy's pledge was tweaked and revised 4 different times over the years. But in 1942, the Bellamy Pledge was formally adopted by Congress, and in 1945, the official name became the Pledge of Allegiance. The final revision to the national oath came in 1954 during the Cold War. I hope when you stand to say the pledge, you might think of the millions of people who stood before you, who now stand with you, and who will stand in the future as we do today for many years to come. So please, let's stand to pledge allegiance to the flag and our great nation that it represents. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Samantha Stafford, would you please come and now sing the national anthem?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
That was lovely, Samantha. Thank you. We would like to recognize the veterans who are here with us today. Could you please come up to the left of my left, your right of the podium, so we can recognize you and get a group picture. So please come on up if you are a veteran in wartime or peacetime. We're going to have you give your name, the branch of service, and what era in which you served. Oh, do we have a... This is wired. This is tied in and wired. Sorry. Yeah. That's fine. Give me their names and.
Maybe they could
There
do
we
it
go.
right here.
This way.
Can you?
This way.
Yeah, let me
Can you walk up and give us your name? Oh, watch out. Sorry. Thought we had a. What's your name, sir?
Tom Shipley,
And what branch of service?
Navy,
And what
World War II.
World War II? Wow. Come on over here, sir. Come on over this way, please. Okay. Next. Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Suhey, U.S. Army, Vietnam.
Colin Stafford, U.S. Army, Sergeant. There was nothing going on when I was in service.
Joe King, United States Air Force, Captain, Vietnam.
Frank Fatisse, United States Army, Vietnam.
Chris Cardine, United States Army, Cold War.
Ron Vandermolen, United States Army, Vietnam.
Ron Conwell, United States Army, Desert Storm.
Sergeant Alex Branzi,
served in the Korean War, wounded twice in battle.
And he has a Purple Heart on his hat. God bless you.
Tom Stremka, U.S. Army, Vietnam.
Michael Fiamma, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, Desert Storm.
Catherine Opie, U.S. Army, 2001 to 2021.
Pierce Broadwell, Sergeant, U.S. Army, 2018 to 2021.
Thank you, veterans. Could we all get, you gentlemen and ladies, all gather together for a group photo, please? Did we miss anyone? Any other veterans in the audience here? We want to thank them all for their service. Yes, don't forget our speaker.
Yeah, I thought, oh yeah, that comes out.
Mm-hmm. Well, we made it work. Yeah. And next is Marcia's up next. Thank you to all our veterans for coming today and allowing us to honor you and making this Veterans Day program so meaningful. The Birmingham City Police Honor Guard will now assist Piety Hill Regent Holly Heiss in placing a wreath in front of the Civil War Monument over here. Mr. Frank Stassa III and Mr. Randy Olenek will play the bagpipes Abide With Me. I am now pleased to introduce our guest speaker, our special guest speaker. Our special guest speaker will be Colonel Llyod L. Sutton. Sutton graduated from West Point in 1973. He holds a master's degree in business management from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in strategic studies from the United States Army War College. He has earned the Army Parachute Badge and wears the U.S. Army Ranger tab. As a helicopter pilot, he has earned the highest military pilot's rating, a Master Aviator. In civilian aviation, he enjoys a private and commercial instrument rotary and fixed-wing airplane rating. Sutton has served 30 years in the U.S. Army and in the Michigan Army National Guard. He has been a successful commander in every command position from company to brigade level. As a brigade commander, Colonel Sutton has had command responsibility and operational control for over 3,000 soldiers, 6 battalions, 30 companies, 52 helicopters, over 1,000 combat vehicles, and 19 armories. Llyod is retired and volunteers for the West Point Society of Michigan, the West Point Association of Graduates, and a variety of aviation and military associations. He volunteers for several organizations working with underserved students, including Saturday Scholar and Leeds. Colonel Llyod L. Sutton.
First, I'd like to thank you for having me. Thank you, City of Birmingham, Mayor Boutros, the Commission, DARs, Holly Heiss, Debbie Harrington, and especially to my friends, Barb and Jim Suhay. Jim, by the way, was an infantry rifle company commander in Vietnam, 2 tours. Few people know that frontline infantry soldiers have long suffered casualties in higher proportion to other positions. Infantry soldiers comprise 90% of U.S. military casualties since World War II. That's the business of a close combat soldier. For more than 250 years, Americans have distinguished themselves on the battlefields for freedom. Places far from American soil, men and women representing every race, religion, and creed in this diverse American melting pot have willingly donned the American military uniform and defended this country and other countries striving for democracy. And they all knew and know the risks. American veterans defended the future of freedom at places like Bunker Hill, Yorktown, Gettysburg, Antietam, the trenches in France, Guadalcanal, Normandy, the Korean Peninsula, Vietnam, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Now, more than ever, we recognize what it means to honor those who served this great nation. We honor these brave warriors, men and women, by not forgetting them. We honor them by not taking for granted what they did and still do for us. But it has not always been so. In 1969, I was a brand new cadet at West Point. One of my nominations for appointment came from Hubert H. Humphrey. For those of you that do not have any gray hair, he was LBJ's vice president. At that time, Jim Suhay, also a West Point graduate, was just returning home from Vietnam. Those were difficult years in America. It was a time of the Cold War. It was a time of political protests. It was a time of civil rights. It was a time of civil rights backlash. And it was a time of anti-war demonstrations. It's a time of Richard Nixon, Watergate, mistrust of everything that was government and military. And our soldiers were treated accordingly. If you were wearing a West Point uniform like me in 1969, or a soldier's uniform adorned with medals for valor like Jim Suhay, you were more likely to be spit upon than to hear today's common phrase of "thank you for your service." but our nation has changed significantly since 9/11. In fact, the entire world has changed since 9/11. With that, I'm going to talk to you about, just for a few more minutes, about a few extraordinary veterans, some extraordinary Americans that virtually no one has ever heard of before. Jesse Brown, Tom Hudner, and James Anderson. I've got a list of about 40 or 50 more that I like talking about, but today I only have time to talk quickly about 3 of them. Let's start with Ensign Jesse Brown and Lieutenant Junior Grade Tom Hudner. They were a couple of extraordinary pilots that you are going to hear more about this coming year. One is white, one is black, and they had an extraordinary relationship with each other. They are from the forgotten war, the Korean War, America's last segregated war. Jesse Brown was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, to a sharecropping family in the deep segregated South. When Brown was 6 years old, his father took him to an air show. Being a naval pilot was his dream. Brown earned his degree from Ohio State University. Not sure if I'm allowed to say that here. He enlisted in U.S. Navy in 1946, becoming a midshipman. Jesse overcame countless obstacles to become the Navy's first black naval aviator. He was a carrier pilot at a time when out of 45,000 naval officers, only 5 were black. And then there was Tom Hudner, a wealthy young white man who hailed from a privileged northeastern background. Tom Hudner decided not to follow in his family's tradition of attending Harvard University. Instead, he selected the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis and pursued a career as a naval aviator. On July 26, 1948, President Truman issued an executive order abolishing segregation in the armed forces and ordering full integration of all services. Executive Order 9981 stated that, quote, there should be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed forces without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin, unquote. Had it not been for Executive Order 9981, Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner would never have met, let alone become the very best of friends. In the Korean War, during the Battle of Chosun Reservoir, the entire 1st Marine Division was completely encircled by the North Korean and the Chinese armies. On 4 December 1950, these 2 legendary F-4U Corsair pilots, Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner, flew into combat to provide air cover. They were part of a 6-aircraft flight supporting U.S. Marine infantry ground troops trapped by the Chinese forces. Several bullets from small arms fire ruptured Jesse Brown's fuel line. Jesse, by the way, was already a decorated hero. Losing fuel pressure and catching fire, Jesse Brown attempted to crash land the aircraft in a snow-covered clearing on a frozen mountainside. Brown crashed into a bowl-shaped valley near Songyongni, 15 miles behind enemy lines in 15-degree weather. The aircraft broke apart violently upon impact and was destroyed. Jesse Brown was barely alive and trapped in the burning aircraft. His legs were crushed and pinned under the instrument panel in the burning wreckage. His wingman and friend, Tom Hudner, stayed overhead providing air cover from the approaching enemy. When fuel was exhausted, instead of returning to the carrier with the other 4 aircraft in the flight, Tom Hudner stayed and intentionally crash-landed his aircraft near Jesse Brown, ran to Jesse's side, and attempted to wrestle him free from the burning wreckage. When all was said and done, Jesse Brown, going in and out of consciousness, his last words were, "Tell Daisy that I love her." Jesse Brown, America's first black carrier pilot, became the first African-American naval officer killed in the Korean War. Half of the Navy brass wanted to court-martial Tom Hudner, Jesse's wingman, for purposely crashing a perfectly good aircraft to save his buddy. The other half of the Navy brass thought Hudner was a hero. Fortunately, cooler heads did prevail, and Tom Hudner was awarded the Medal of Honor. I've been talking about Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner for many years, and that's because most Americans have never heard of them. And now Hollywood is picking up the mantle, and the world will wake up to two more extraordinary yet unknown American veterans. This will happen soon, and you heard it first right here in Cheyne Park. It reminds me of Katherine Johnson, who was a brilliant NASA scientist and was the world's foremost authority on orbital mechanics. But when she started at NASA, they had her fetching coffee for the male scientists. For 50 years, few Americans even knew she existed, let alone her accomplishment. That accomplishment was being one of the few brilliant individuals responsible for putting America on the moon first. And in 2016, Hollywood came out with a movie called Hidden Figures. And now the whole world knows of Katherine Johnson. I believe the same thing will happen for Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner. You see, as a veteran, this is how I enjoy giving back. I go to veteran centers, universities, community centers, schools, and I talk about our servicemen and women. I talk about the values that these magnificent men and women, our veterans, displayed during their service to America. I talk about how they epitomize the 7 Army Corps values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. I talk about how they changed the trajectory of so many lives, even this entire country. In other words, they gave to America in the most unique ways. Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner epitomize the value of duty and courage. As I said, they are from the forgotten war, the Korean War. Why is it called the Forgotten War? The veterans of the Korean War did not return home to parades like the veterans of World War II. They did not return home to protests like the Vietnam veterans. The Korean War started soon after World War II. Americans were tired of war. There was a desire to forget and move on. The Korean War veterans, they just came home, they took off their uniforms, and they went to work. But no war should ever be forgotten, and no veteran should ever be overlooked. Just 5 months ago, this past June, the remains of PFC Eddie Reiter from Northampton, Virginia, were identified from the Korean War. Eddie Reiter arrived in Korea on July 2nd, 1950, attached to K Company, 3rd Battalion, 34th Infantry Regiment, 24th Division. 5 days later, he was gone. He was 17 years old. Also, just 3 months ago, this past August, the remains of Army Corporal Joseph Pupulo of East Boston, Massachusetts, was identified. Corporal Pupulo went missing during the Korean War at the age of 19. The news was given to his now 99-year-old sister, Elizabeth Florentini, who had not seen her brother since she was in her 20s. As of September this year, there are still 7,529 U.S. military personnel remaining unaccounted for from the Korean War. according to the Defense POW and MIA accounting agencies. Now, let's quickly discuss PFC James Anderson from the Vietnam War. He exemplified the values of loyalty, selfless service, honor, and courage. James Anderson left college to enlist in the United States Marine Corps February 17, 1966, at the age of 19. PFC Anderson served as an infantry rifleman with Company F, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Division in Quang Tri Province, Vietnam. On February 28, 1967, PFC Anderson found himself tightly bunched together with 15 other members of his platoon in a heavy and violent firefight. The 16 Marines were surrounded by an overwhelming number of enemy soldiers just 20 meters away. Suddenly, an enemy grenade landed in the midst of those 16 Marines. All 16 Marines looked at that grenade and knew they had breathed their last breath. Unhesitatingly, and with complete disregard for his own life, Private First Class James Anderson turned, leaped on a grenade, pulled it to his chest, curled around the grenade as it went off. He saved the lives of 15 of his fellow Marines, his American brothers. He had just turned 20 years old. As I travel around the country telling that story, usually in more detail, I always quote John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. It is so special to me and to every other veteran when we hear of organizations like the DAR, the City of Birmingham, and others that pay tribute to our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, both men and women. How do I give back? I do what many of you do. I acknowledge our veterans that serve the country. Because thanks to these noble citizens and citizen soldiers, freedom endures today and will endure for future generations. So I'm going to end with this very short poem written by Father Dennis Edward O'Brien, United States Marine Corps. It is a soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, that has given us the freedom to demonstrate. It's a soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allow the protesters to burn the flag. So I'm going to conclude with a hearty thank you very much for having me, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sutton. On behalf of Piety Hill Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, we present you with a donation for your choice of charity with the Saturday Scholars.
Thank you.
And as well as this flag.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Samantha Stafford will sing America the Beautiful. You're welcome to sing along. Come on, sing.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray. Oh, purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his
bountiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success and nobleness and every gain divine. Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, Samantha, that was beautiful. Thank you. Frank Stassa and Randy Olenek will play Amazing Grace as Holly Heiss, Piety Hill Regent, is accompanied by the Birmingham police officers to place a wreath at the World War II monument. We will conclude this ceremony with the playing of taps by Ms. Lynn Popa, member of the Ezra Parker chapter of DAR. Thank you, Lynn. Our ceremony is now concluded. Please join us in the Baldwin Public Library in the Rotary Room downstairs for a short reception for veterans hosted by the Piety Hill chapter. Thank you for coming today to honor our veterans. Thank you.